So now what we'd like to do is move into our first panel for the day. And for our first panel, we'll be taking a look at kind of perspectives on SBEAP partnerships. And we've got a couple of longtime industry partners of the SBEAP national program on with us to talk about their work with state programs, successes, challenges, and words of advice for the future. So, I'm fortunate myself because I've had an opportunity to work with both of our speakers. We've got Dale Kaplan, who's the owner of Kaplan's Careful Cleaners in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. Dale's also a longtime chair of the Pennsylvania Small Business Compliance Assistance Committee or Advisory Committee, and was also on the national CAP when one existed. And I've known Dale since my early days in Pennsylvania with the Pennsylvania EMAP program. Dale is also a member of the Pennsylvania Dry Cleaners and Launderers Association. And I had been invited to speak at one of their events. And you know what we all hear about, knowing your audience. And so I knew I was going to a dinner event with a bunch of dry cleaners. So I thought, well, I better dress up for this. And sure enough, as soon as I was done, Dale came up to me and put his hands on my jacket, and he said, "Oh, nice jacket. Is that linen?" So Dale knows his materials. He knows his linen from his woolens. So you got to know your audience and know who you're talking to. And then we'll also be hearing from Marci Kinter. And Marci is the Vice President of Government and Regulatory Affairs for Printing United Alliance, where she helps members in the printing industry understand their environmental and safety regulatory compliance obligations. And Marci and I, we first did a tour of Pennsylvania. We went, I know, to Pittsburgh, and we went to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. We went to Philadelphia to do outreach and some trainings for members of the screen printing industry. And so I've known Marci since the late 90s. So it's great to have both Dale and Marci on today. And what I'd like to do is get started with Dale. I know you have a slide deck prepared, and want to ask both of you to start off by telling us a little bit about what you're doing and how you've worked with the SBEAP programs over the years. So Dale, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Am I on? Okay. So I want to start off, I'm going to break off from a little bit of script and just tell you that I want who's ever listening to think of your local dry cleaner. You don't have to change from going in a button-up shirt to work, or women in clothes that need dry cleaned. Our industry has been decimated by the pandemic, and we are trying to hope it comes back. I've sat on the National Board of Dry Cleaners. I'm a volunteer for the SBEAP program in Pennsylvania since 1996, and I serve as the chairman now for 15 years. And as Chris mentioned, at one point I was chair of the national CAP. So I believe in giving back to the industry that I belong to. And I will tell you that I'm a small business owner. April 7th, I celebrated 44 years. I had a dry cleaning machine that we used to use 150 gallons of perchloroethylene a month. That was in 78. By 1981 or 82, I put in my first new dry cleaning machine and went down to 30 gallons a month. 15, 16 years later, I upgraded to another new dry cleaning machine, and now I use 5 gallons a month, still cleaning 1 to 2,000, some weeks 3,000 pounds of dry cleaning a week. So it's very powerful to me to stay as an industry leader in embracing new technology to decrease our solvent usage. You know, as Chris was giving his presentation about the two of us, the dry cleaners and the printing industry from the time of the Clean Air Act have always been either number one or number two to get regulations promulgated for us. So that's why I volunteered in 96, because I wanted to have a seat at the table to be able to talk to our local administrator, the DEP secretary, and those people in different bureaus, so that you could actually hopefully make a positive change to help people in our industry be able to comply. And I'll never forget the day that Chris Lynch and I sat. We had a young woman named Katie McGinty, who at one time was on a national level with some guy named Al Gore. And we asked her to start giving us $1 million a year. And she did. And out of what they call the HASCA funds here in PA. And ever since that time, it's probably 12 years, we've been giving away virtually $900 to $950 to $1 million a year to small businesses in PA. They had to make a commitment to spend $7,500 and we matched. So that it's just good programs to help people, compliance assistance and pollution prevention. And that's what I'm all about. I don't try to make money from all this. But over the years, I'll also never forget the time we had somebody giving us a presentation on when they were trying to take those little diodes out of the hood and the trunk of a car. And one of my friends from synagogue had just invested $6.5 million in a shredder in his scrapyard. So I took a group of people to visit him at his shredder. And he said, I'm never going to be the guy that you can pay $1.75 to take that little thing. It cost me too much money. So it went back down the chain and we got other people to do it so that he could then shred his cars. He's a pretty big scrap operator in the Harrisburg area. So Chris, I'm sorry, I had some notes for myself and my little screen went off. Give me the next slide. I'm sorry, I know I only have 5 minutes. So here's an award that Nancy and I were given because of the small business program. And Nancy was Chris's assistant at the time, or maybe she was already, as Chris left to go to another state. But we got an award on a national level from let me turn that decline, I'm sorry. So we got an award. Chris, let's go to the next slide. And here's a group when we actually hosted in Pennsylvania our national program. This is probably 8 or 9 years ago. And I can never forget that one of the people explained to me that it's like a three-legged stool. When you have the Small Business Compliance Assistance Program, which in PA we use EMAP, we contracted it out. We have a Small Business Ombudsman, and we have our Compliance Advisory Committee. When all those three programs are working together, it just really works for the state of Pennsylvania. And I believe that we are one of the few states that have all three legs working evenly together. And I try to promote that. We just had our meeting at the end of April, and I invited the new director for our Bureau of Air Quality, which is where our Section 507 money comes from. Let me move fast, Chris, because I don't want to be over my 5 minutes. But give me
you're okay. You're okay.
Am I okay? Okay. Well, I'm trying to make sure that I get everything in. I don't want to steal any time. So, but Chris was there with us, and we had a great time in Harrisburg, PA, hosting the meeting. And certain things you never forget. I rented a couple 15-passenger vans. You know, when you're here in PA, we're about 45 minutes from Gettysburg National Park. So I took a group of 30 people down, and we had a colonel give us a tour. He had us split us up into two people, and we were firing guns at each other, just our hands. But it was one of the most eventful days. I'd been there many times with my children, but never as an adult in that kind of event, and it was really pretty cool. So next slide. I have another one, don't I, at least? Yeah.
Yes,
So
you do.
I actually already talked about not all three parts. This is actually in my store, in my dry cleaners, where I volunteer whenever, I think it was a summer intern, and she was going to go around and visit all the dry cleaners in at least the 15 central PA region of Pennsylvania, and visit and talk about environmental waste issues and so on. And I wanted her to have the opportunity to be in a dry cleaner that was in compliance. I keep my records. I check my machine every week and do all the things that I need to do. And so that was her. And while I was giving her the impression, the nickel tour of a dry cleaners, so that she really knew she could talk knowledgeably when she went into there were 65 dry cleaners within probably 25 or 30 miles of my store. Pandemic closures and restrictions, Pennsylvania was challenging the first couple months. Nobody went to work, as probably most of the country was the same thing. The first month we were 90% off, then we were 75% off. And now the economic downturn seems to be that most dry cleaners are either 40 or 50% off from the numbers we used to do pre-pandemic. It's very challenging because people are doing telework, people are, there's not in-person meetings. We're just starting to see people traveling. And when men travel, they'll wear a jacket, shirt, and tie, or the tie may be gone completely, but at least a jacket and a button-up shirt. So we're hoping to see that continue, but who knows how this pandemic is going to be. I apologize. My screensaver on my Zoom is my two little dogs on the beach with me last summer, but we have fun together. And I know that this same kind of thing has happened to many industries and have struggled and struggled. Some industries are just zooming up in terms of gross dollars, and some industries are suffering like we are because we're personal to what you as a human being need. You need our services. Now, I have 3 full-time tailors, and there we're doing a booming business because many women are buying from Zulily and Amazon or whoever, and the goods come in. Some people don't like sending things back, so we're still altering clothing, but it's been an interesting process getting through these last 2 years. Do I still have one more, I think, Chris?
It's just your question slide, I think.
So yeah, I can release it to Marci, I think, and should we take questions together afterwards?
Yeah, why don't we do that? We'll
Okay.
we'll hold the main questions. And Dale, you mentioned that you've got your dogs in your background. I just want everybody to know this is not a virtual background behind me. I'm actually in a hotel room in Las Vegas. So these are my beautiful drapes behind me in Las Vegas. So what I'd like to do next is have Marci talk a little bit about not only her industry association, but also her work with SBEAPs over the years. Welcome, Marci.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I'm not
Yes.
muted. Okay, great. Chris, I cannot believe how long we've known each other and have worked together. This is like too scary. Let me just put it that way. So hi, my name is Marci Kinter. I'm the Vice President of Government and Regulatory Affairs for Printing United Alliance. Now, some of you may be going, because Printing United is the merger between SGIA and Printing Industries of America, the National Printing Industries of America. So I came, as everyone knows, from the SGIA side, the screen print side, and my colleague, Gary Jones, who I've worked with for over 30 years now as well, he's now with me, and we both tackle all the issues associated with printing on the regulatory side. And, our areas haven't changed. It's, environmental, safety and health, sustainability has gained stronger momentum. And over the years, and oh my goodness, I was listening to you, Chris, talk about the remembrances of how long the program's been around. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this is, I know a lot of these people on the call. It's very scary. And I remember the first meetings of the small business assistance programs. And I've attended many of your in-person meetings. So it's just been very exciting. But I will ask the question, how many of you remember PNAC, the Printers National Environmental Assistance Center? We did a lot of work with the small business programs through PNAC. And my first program was with Chris in Pennsylvania from the US EPA's Design for the Environment program before it became the Safer Products program. They were doing cleaner product assessments on different issues within the industry. And we in the printing industry, like the dry cleaners, raised our hands and said, yes, look at us. We'd love to have different things going on. So we did some outreach, and we've also done outreach with Florida. We've done outreach in Missouri. And when I say we, it is the merry band of the printing trade associations. So it would be myself and Gary Jones. It would also be looking at Deb Jacobson from Illinois. She was also one of our prominent speakers, as she was really, oh, there's Deb now. She was a really large part of PNAC, as was the late Wayne Ferdyhert. And we did a lot of work in Indiana. We're still working with Mark Stoddard in Indiana. And we did work in Missouri, Colorado, more work in Pennsylvania. And right now we're still doing quite a bit of work in Wisconsin with Renee. So it is very exciting and just very gratifying to be able to work with you all, because what I have found is that the small business assistance programs, you're willing to learn about the industry sectors. You're willing to really listen to us and to understand our concerns and understand that not all industries are the same. You know, we heard Dale talk about the issues associated with the dry cleaners, and we all know the printers have similar issues, but they are different. So you are willing to listen and to work with us and to develop programs that speak to our industry sector. We may only get 20 to 30 people at a pop at a program, but those are 20 to 30 small businesses that have a real need and a real desire to understand what their compliance obligations might be, but also to understand what they can do to reduce their overall environmental footprint. I'm also always impressed with your desire to learn. I know I've invited Chris, he's in Vegas, and last time I saw Chris was in Las Vegas when we had our show there. And, being able to allow you all to come to our shows and to walk around and to look at the equipment and to talk to people, and also to get to know how the industry has changed, because printing has evolved tremendously over the past 30 years with the introduction of digital print applications, and just looking even at our analog equipment, how much it has changed, and the chemicals used. A lot of that has shifted due to the regulatory issues, but it's also due to the outreach and the compliance resources that you all provide to the industry sector that speak directly to the industry. And I just can't overemphasize that point. And also your willingness to listen to Gary, myself, and Deb talk to you about the printing industry and to help educate you on what exactly the printing industry is and does and how we're different, because we all use different products. And I guess the understanding from the offices that printing is not generic, that there are many different types of print processes, and you all do love to get those t-shirts. That's most of my industry. So I want to thank you. It's been just such a joy working with you all, and I look forward to further engagements with you as we move down the road. But I will say that on behalf of the printing industry, and specifically myself and Gary Jones, we just really appreciate the opportunity to work with you and to help you understand the industry and develop resources specific for the industry. And I will say that you all are my go-to. If I have a small business that calls me and has a question, I reach out to you all to say, hey, what resources do you have to help them understand this particular issue? So you all are just wonderful resources, and thank you.
Thank you, Marci. That's great. And I know that I've had a lot of fun learning the different industries, learning from Dale and learning about the dry cleaners and how dry cleaning operates, and learning from you the different kinds of printing, from screen printing to lithographic to all the different types of printing. It really helps for them when we go out to visit businesses to have a better understanding of how the processes work and how the industry works. So, we also really appreciate the help that you're willing to provide, both you, Dale, as a dry cleaner, and you, Marci, as a representative of the printing industry. So, and I have a question for both of you, and Dale, I'll start with you. Just, what do you see as the greatest impact of the SBEAP programs over the years that, you've been involved working with us, and, where do you think we could have the greatest impact going forward? And Dale, I think the admins might need to unmute you. Allison or Abby, could you unmute Dale, please? There we go.
Sorry, I muted because I didn't want to bother Marci while she was talking. I will tell you that, you know, I started to mention the one time I took a group from our local DEP, our state DEP, to a scrapyard guy. You know, I've had some very powerful events. You know, I'm going to repeat myself and tell you that the first number of years after you and I visited Katie McGinty, we had 30 or 40 dry cleaners that every year would buy a new dry cleaning machine to be more in compliance and do pollution prevention so that they could stay in business. And then, of course, the little city of Philadelphia, if you remember years ago, out-banned perchloroethylene. The rest of the state's okay. So we've had our challenges, but I love being able to give back to my community of dry cleaners. It's just been a powerful opportunity to be a part of something that is really good for the industry, because this is my life. This is all I got going. And if I'm not a small business owner, I don't know what I would do. My friend Tony just asked if what do you think about EPA proposing to eliminate third generation PERC machines? And I would say they should do it. We want to eliminate heavy users of perchloroethylene so that the industry is not regulated even a more, we don't want to see promulgation of fourth and fifth generation PERC machines. Tony, thanks for asking. Sorry.
All right. Well, thanks, Dale. And Marci, the same question for you. Just, you know, where do you think the programs have been most impactful, and where can we have the greatest impact going forward?
I really see that the most impact that the small business programs have had is really in the providing of resources specific for small businesses. We all know that the environmental regulations are pretty much the environmental regulations, but as you said, Chris, it's the ability for you all to do a really total deep dive into them and help a small business owner understand what their ultimate responsibilities are, and to provide tools for them to figure it out, but also to provide tools for compliance. And I know we've worked with many different small business compliance offices to develop those tools to help the industry comply, because that is our overarching goal, is to help them move into compliance. I think down the road, and we're working with a couple of states on this, down the road, I think what it's really turning more into, especially with the whole focus now on sustainability and moving beyond environmental sustainability, but looking at that total picture of end of life and product substitution and, you know, circular economy and all these big terms that keep cropping up in our everyday language. I think it's really working with the states for the states to help businesses, especially small businesses, understand you know, when they get a request from a customer. I mean, we're fielding information on carbon footprinting. What the heck is a carbon footprint? You know, looking at energy reduction. I know that a lot of, you know, especially the small business development centers have energy reduction capabilities and energy reduction programs. I think when you start to just follow what the particular administration is doing, but also what it looks like is happening within industry, I think that the small business offices are sometimes able to turn a lot quicker to help the small business community adapt and to develop those tools to help them understand. I mean, you know, that they'll call you and go, what the heck's a carbon footprint and why do I care? Because their customers are asking them for that. You know, we're never going to see sustainability regulated, but we are starting to see the marketplace pay more attention.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. And so another question, Marci, and I'll start with you. You know, you've worked with a lot of programs over the years. What have you seen as some of the most effective ways that the programs have reached the small business community? Well, either through your own association or through the programs. You know, what do you recommend for reaching the small business community? Because sometimes it's challenging.
Right. And I think it really looks at what, you know, I think first the small business office has to decide what sectors do they want to focus on. You know, Dale's right. In the past, dry cleaning and printing, we were up there. We were like number one and number two. And, you know, printing has fallen along the wayside. But I think that when you look at the specific state, they need to decide, okay, are you going to do somewhat of a generic program? I'm working with Mark Stoddard in Indiana, and we have done work in Wisconsin on more of a generic, and then you work with the trade associations to really tailor it to that industry sector. So it's not, it's really still developing those partnerships with the industry trade associations that represent small businesses. So you can have an overarching generic program, but then it's how do you tailor it? That's when you can really look to the partner associations to help you to do outreach. And that's where I think the biggest benefit has been, and also the biggest bang for the buck, because then the state small business offices can develop a waste reduction program, and then it's, then they reach out to their partner associations and go, how does this impact you guys? Something you can use, and how do we do this? And then they're willing to help us develop outreach strategies, and then we can provide that outreach mechanism, because we can't give our lists over to the state, but we've done mailings, emails, webinars. So it really is still that partnering to get the word out and to develop those specific resources based on what the state office has developed in the beginning. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
Excellent.
And I remember working with you to do that, to reach the printing industry in the past. Dale, how about you? What do you think are the effective ways for reaching the small business community, and what do you recommend for our programs?
Well, when you give a little, you get a lot back in return. And my experience, whether from synagogue or this kind of life that I give as a volunteer, has been very powerful. I can speak more intelligently about the dry cleaning industry because I've traveled throughout the state and made sure that people are aware of what's going on, what they need to comply with. And many of us, to make it very honestly, are switching away from PERC or hydrocarbon solvents to going, I just bought 2 new machines and I'm going to be going wet cleaning. I haven't got rid of my PERC machine yet, but that's my plan, is to go totally green and be. The challenge is, if you get a $2,000 or $3,000 suit in that's all wool, are you okay putting in water? But I would say, back to your original question, is I think helping people to think about, and somebody made a note that when you develop compliance and pollution prevention ways for people to, and put it in real English, and we always have to translate now to Korean also, because a big part of our community throughout the state is Korean Americans. So when you give a little, you get a lot back in return, and help people, make it easy for them to comply with the rules and regs of state or federal. And I've been to too many meetings and too many times. I can't tell you how much I've given back as a free time to help people make sure they, even when they've decided now to switch from perchloroethylene, how to clean out the machine properly and make sure it doesn't have a trail, because God forbid somebody picks it up from your backyard, they put it into a landfill, and all of a sudden there's a trace that goes back to where it came from, and you're the one that put perchloroethylene in somebody's backyard. And we all have our challenges, but I think the big picture is that developing pollution prevention and compliance assistance, and continuing to drudge after it, because I'm sure the printers are somewhat similar, and that many of our owner operators are very small operators, and 2 and 5 people operations. And they don't necessarily, many of them say to me, I do my compliance assistance on the kitchen table after we eat dinner. They don't have the money to bring in an engineer or an environmental lawyer. So you got to put it in real simple, plain English that it's easy to fill out and make sure that they can comply.
Right. No, thanks, Dale. And we're almost out of time, but let me ask for the real quick answer back from both of you. And Marci, you've kind of touched on this a little bit already in your remarks, but what words, as we're celebrating 30 years, what words of advice do you have for the programs going forward? Are there areas that we'd really be missing the boat if we didn't address as programs?
Well, and that's hard, because I don't know how many of the programs, I know there was a move to really go multimedia for some programs, and some programs are still basically air oriented. I think those that can, if they don't have a multimedia approach or mandate, if they look to at least work with other departments within their overarching environmental agency, because small businesses do not think one program at a time. They don't understand it. They really have that multimedia approach, and you need to be able to show them how, by switching out a chemical at the very beginning of their process, is going to, root cause design is going to end up in a resulting operational savings or reduction in their waste, or et cetera. So I do think it is more important than ever to do multimedia.
Thanks. Dale?
I pretty much agree with what Marci said. I mean, I'm just reading a question from Mark that we are found in strip malls. I can't tell you how many calls a month I get from a small dry cleaner in a strip mall who now somebody bought the strip center, and all of a sudden they do some phase 1, phase 2s, and they find that there's a problem with underground contamination in that strip center. And of course, they're going to trace it right back, because it's perchloroethylene, trace it right back to the dry cleaner. I don't think Marci, you guys have never used perchloroethylene in cleaning your machinery, have you? Not the ones I do.
No, but we do. It depends on what, we, as Chris knows, we had some issues with perc in our stripping fluids for textile screen printing. So yeah, it's been there, and methylene chloride and all that other stuff that you're trying to remove out of the system. So yeah,
it's a challenge. So many of us have challenges, and I get these kind of calls 2 or 3 a month now. It's slowed down because a lot of people have gone away from perc. And so I still use the terminology that when you give a little, you get a lot back in return, and helping people to comply and not have to pay $250,000, $500,000 to help clean up the contamination level that's underneath that strip center. It's very challenging, and there's pretty much no insurance for us. So does that answer your question?
Yes, definitely. And
It did.
thank you. Thank you to both of you. I really appreciate you taking the time this afternoon to join us and give your perspectives. I know I've valued the working relationships and the friendships with both of you and over the years. And thank you for everything you've done in the past with us. And we look forward to working with both of you going forward into the future. So thank you very much for being here with us today.
oh, thank you, Chris. It's just such a pleasure. Still, we remember back to the in-person meetings and how huge they were, and I look forward to those in-person meetings again.
Well, the in-person next year will be in Lake Tahoe, Nevada, so put that on your calendars.
And I also value the relationship to the SBEAPs and SBDCs. So thank you very much for continuing on.
All right. Well, thanks again.